I'm ready for all today, through all the pain, all the way, the fight for all, my life, the love, we're taking it all the way,
You know what? We've just hit peak draft season. This is where all of my group chats, they're starting to light up and say, hey guys, what do we do in the draft? Let's schedule for this weekend. Let's do it the next weekend. Let's get on Zoom. Let's have it live. Let's figure something out. Because you know what? This is probably the best time of the year. All right. Like I could sit here and say, oh, championship season, the Super Bowl. And honestly, like real talk, this is probably the best time of the season. When you're sitting there constructing your lineup, picking your guys, and you know what, everyone's kind of talking trash, especially if you know the people you're with. I know when you're doing kind of like random leagues on Yahoo, it doesn't have that same substance to it, but
Right.
when you are with a group of people that you are familiar with and there is some jokes being flown around, you know what, in my opinion, that's peak fantasy football season. But of course, I am alongside Tippmajor, man. How you doing?
I'm good, bro. I'm good. I love the intro. I love how you talked about constructing your team, because that's what we're doing right now. Even in dynasty leagues, we're trying to figure out a way to construct our teams better than what it was the last season. I mean, unless you won the championship, but you want to win another one, right? So, yeah, it's really fun to see right now. It is a fun part of the year. Always look forward to August.
Yeah, I mean, right now there's this one league that I have grown a little bit fond of, and a couple people are claiming that they are no longer able to make the commitment of a full-time fantasy season. In my opinion, that's really lame. Like, come on, really? Like, you're not the president of the United States. Like, even the president of the United States has time to go golfing or to go on vacation. Like, you're not that busy. Relax, buddy. You can go spend 2 hours on a Zoom call, or not even on a Zoom call, just a Yahoo or ESPN or whatever league able fantasy draft and pick a couple guys here and there. And then congratulations. All you got to do is spend 5 minutes on Monday for waivers, maybe on 5 minutes on Saturdays for setting your lineup. Come on, guys. It's not that serious.
Yeah, I mean, I've known people like that too. And, it's for some people, it's not. For me, for you, it's very serious. It's fun. It's fun to talk smack and win. And then sometimes, I mean, it sucks to lose, but that's a part of the game. You're going to have some ones that win. You're going to have some people that lose. And then sometimes you lose really bad if it's a big time injury. But it's just a part of the game. Like, we don't know what's going to happen in, 16 days, the start of it. We just don't know.
Exactly. And you know what? The fun part about it is that, you know what? I'm going to watch football regardless. So I might as well put something on the line a little bit. I'm not too much of a gambling man. I'll put buy-ins for fantasy leagues. I'll do that. No problem. But, betting on specific games, I try to stay away from that. I don't have the ability to put my money where my mouth is on that. So, you know what? This is how I keep myself interested on the Monday nights, Thursday nights, Sunday night games when, you know what? I'm not a whole interested on the teams. You know what? I'm sorry, but if the Jaguars, and actually Jaguars, I'm a little interested in them this year. I'm trying to think of like two really bad teams where it's like, okay, come on, ain't nobody got time for that. Like, for example, like maybe the Saints or.
Oh, don't tell the Saints fans that. We don't want them marching on it. Oh my goodness!
I'm trying to think of another team. Like
the Patriots. They've won enough. It's time for them to lose.
I know, but they got a rookie quarterback, so they got a little storylines behind them where you're like, oh, you know what? Let's see how he does. I'm a little interested. You know what? Ramondre Stevenson has a high ADP. Maybe a lot of people are going to draft him. They're going to watch him. I'm trying to think of something like the Washington.
I don't know.
The problem's even Washington. They drafted a quarterback. I know. I'm you know what? I'm having writer's block right now.
Seattle Seahawks, but no, I'm interested in them too. I don't know.
Yeah, you know what? All I know is the Saints. It's like, who cares about the Saints? Like, God, you got nothing going for you. Derek Carr's your quarterback. I know you got Alvin Kamara, but even then, it's like, I don't know. Maybe the Saints on the bye week. Saints and the Raiders. I'm sorry, Tip.
Hey,
I'm sorry to say
man.
But even then, they got Devontae
We're
Adams, so there's a reason to watch it. But like,
and Brock Bowers, bro. I mean, look, I was listening on the radio station this afternoon, and Brock Bowers touchdown. I actually tweeted this or posted this on X. His touchdown total is 4.5. 4.5 for a look. Gardner Minshew is who Gardner Minshew is, but I will say this: he does not struggle in 12 personnel, and that's what they're going to run this year. They're running a 12 personnel. He does pretty good in a 12 personnel offense. So I am nervous about Luke Getsy. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm not. I'm nervous about. I was nervous about the O-line, but I think that they can get some things figured out. But I really, this Brock Bowers kid, if I'm out there gambling, I know you're not a gambling man, but if you listening in and you want to get a little nugget, 4.5 touchdowns for Brock Bowers, I'm smashing the over on that.
Sorry, right now I'm trying to figure out like who's a really boring team that no one cares to watch.
You still on that? I'm
still on that. Like I need to know. Like, come on. Like,
I don't know.
You know what I think it is? I think it's the Titans.
I think it's got a little intrigue with this running back situation that they got 2 running backs that kind of do the same thing, and Calvin Ridley. D-Hop getting hurt. The offensive line, are they going to figure that out? Maybe it is the Titans. Their defense is always usually pretty good.
Maybe the Falcons.
The Buccaneers, maybe the Bucs.
No, not the Falcons. Sorry, not the Falcons.
The Buccaneers.
The Buccaneers, yes, but they have a lot of fantasy implications, right? There's still Mike Evans. There's still I can't think of the running back off the top of my name. Rashad White, Godwin usually going to be in there, maybe in potentially people's flex spots, stuff like that. A
lot of people are talking about K. Dotton. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, the Panthers, but even then they got a couple playmakers there on their team now. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right. You know what? Say like a Monday night, it's the Saints and the Titans. Realistically, ain't nobody got time for that. I'm still watching it, but like realistically, for the average person, ain't nobody got time for that.
Ain't got nobody got time for that. Right?
Ain't nobody time for that. All right, but on this episode, you know what? We've sidetracked enough. We're still gonna sidetrack some more, but on this episode, we're gonna be talking about those guys that you gotta have in your fantasy draft. Those guys where they're in the range. Maybe it's a little early. It doesn't matter. You're smashing that double tap, hitting that draft on my team button. Those guys, like you just gotta have them. You just have to have them. It's like, it's like ice cream. You just gotta have it. And you know what? For example, I'm gonna give you a tidbit. Like Mike Evans, I just gotta have him. He's a guy like, I see him, I'm smashing it. I want him on my roster. I'm gonna be salty AF at you if you take him before me. That's just my opinion. But that's gonna be the little tidbit there. But right now, it's overreaction time, and preseason games have not come and gone, but by the time this episode comes out, chances are all 3 preseason games have started, or they're just about to start. And right now there's a plethora of rookie quarterbacks or quarterbacks that, we're interested in, players we're interested in. Is there anybody, Tip, that you are intrigued by or impressed?
In the quarterback position?
Anything. Quarterback is probably the easiest one to answer, but
I'm there's a couple. I am starting to really get intrigued with CJ Stroud. Look, last year his completion percentage was 60, 63, 64. It was like 20th in the league. It wasn't very good, right? So what do you do to help out a completion percentage? You go and you get a Stephon Diggs. You go and get a little bit better offensive line. You continue their offense with Bobby Slowick, who's a Princeton-born man. It's really cool I always look and see where people are from, what colleges they went to. But with Bobby Slowick, man, I tell you, with this offense, it's a 49ers offense. It is, I should say a Kyle Shanahan offense. So with those weapons and a Kyle Shanahan offense, I'm really, really intrigued what these Texans can build upon. Last year, CJ Stroud took the league by fire, and we saw what he could bring to this table. He's got a very accurate arm. He can throw the ball deep and accurate as well. He's a little bit more athletic than people give him credit for, although he's not a big runner. he can still slide around, get around the pocket. I love CJ Stroud in this situation that he's in. And if it's me, I'm trying to leave with him in most all of my drafts. And one thing that I just did on my last draft that I was in is I drafted Joe Mixon, because Joe Mixon is a pass catching running back. He's not going to be like top, 2 guy or 3 guy or 5, even 5, but he will pass. He will catch some passes. And I think CJ Stroud will throw passes to him. And what I did was I stacked CJ Stroud with Joe Mixon, and I'm excited to see what that'll bring to the team.
Yeah, stacking. You know what? I always say it. I live by the stack, die by the stack. I'm always looking to find a way to stack my wide receiver or quarterback, I should say, with another pass catching weapon on their team. Now, for me, example, yeah, I'll be honest. I haven't really been impressed by anybody where I'm like, oh, you know what? He rose around my draft rankings, specifically on the rookies. The quarterbacks, I don't think anything's changed because they've done exactly what we expected them to do. Like, we expected Caleb Williams to struggle making routine plays, but have these phenomenal flashy plays when he rolls out of the pocket, throws a deep pass. Like, he's done that. We expect him to do that.
Mm-hmm.
We expected Bo Nix, I believe his name, to dink and dunk his way down the field, have a high completion percentage. We expected that. We expected, sorry, I forgot the Patriots quarterback name. Remind me.
Drake May.
Drake May. We expected him to have a little bit of a bigger arm, kind of sling it down the field. He's done that. Nobody's really impressed me. I will say that. In this preseason, it's really early, and I will say that teams are so basic in the preseason that it's hard to give it value and context to sit there and say, oh, he's rose around the draft boards because of that. I think it's the players that don't play are the ones that are more interesting and intriguing because teams are worried about them getting hurt. Like, for example, like Ramondre Stevenson, I don't think he's played this whole preseason, but the other rookies have. So in my opinion, that tells me, you know what? They value Ramondre Stevenson so highly that they're making sure he doesn't get hurt in the preseason. So he's the type of person where I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm a little bit more interested in him because of that. But all right. Any closing statements on that one, Tip?
No, you got it, man. That was good.
Yeah, you know what? On a complete side note, in the fantasy draft that you and I are in, your league, I'm looking at it and I don't see my I don't see my name on the 6th round for some reason. Like, am I blind? Or is there a rule change on that one? Did you change that?
No, I didn't change anything.
Yeah, because I'm pick 5.
I saw your name though on there.
I'm pick 5, right, in the 6th round.
Yeah,
but in that spot, my name's not there.
Okay.
Right?
I'll have to take a look at that.
My name's not there, unless it's like Snake and like I'm completely reading it wrong, which might be true. Anyway, sorry that it popped in my mind. I was like, hold on, this isn't right. Anyway, yeah. All right. So on today's episode, we're going to be talking about those must-have guys that we must leave that draft with, as we've said multiple times. Now, you know what? I could tell you the top 5. I already could tell you. Tip is going to say you leave with Bijan Robinson. All right. You know what? We're going to put him to the side. Look. I'm sorry. Yeah, we already know. Bijan, we're putting him to the side.
All right.
And I for sure am a huge fan of Amon-Ra St. Brown. A lot of people are. And he is, in my opinion, bust proof, minus an injury. He is, in my opinion, bust proof. He's going to have the receptions. He's going to have the yards after catch. He's going to have the touchdowns, and he's going to have opportunities. Because when you look at an offense and you kind of dissect what it takes for a wide receiver to be successful, you have to have a offensive lineman that could protect the quarterback. And congratulations, they probably have statistically the best in the NFL. They have to have a running game that makes it so they stack the box or have to worry about something that the play action becomes viable. And then more importantly, they have to have a quarterback that's going to throw it to that wide receiver. And they check mark all 3 of those boxes. That when that happens, the wide receivers almost immediately become successful. If you look at any offense with a successful running game and a mediocre quarterback, almost immediately you can look at the wide receivers and say they are productive, because it happens time after time after time after time again. For example, a couple years ago, Justin Jefferson, he was a obviously wide receiver one. Why? They had a good offensive line, and then they had Dalvin Cook in his prime, just absolutely stacking boxes, giving him opportunities for play action where you saw those huge crossing routes going across the field and so on and so forth. Amari Cooper with the Cowboys. All of a sudden, he becomes a lot more of a consistent type player with huge games because Zeke, good offensive line, and Dak Prescott. Anytime there are boxes checkmarked in that sort of the field, you will always correlate wide receiver production. Tip, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, if I could just add one other thing to that is coaching.
Coaching, yeah, fair point. Fair point.
That offensive coordinator in Detroit, Mr. Johnson, like he has got this squad pinpointed perfectly. Like he knows what everybody's weaknesses are. He knows what everybody's strengths are on this team. Amon-Ra St. Brown is not a burner by any means. Like he is not a guy who's going to beat you for 60 yards. But with that offense and the blocking schemes and the way that they get things done, he could rip one of those off because of simply, like I said, they're blocking. There was a game last year, man, against the Tampa Bay Bucks where they had such a cool blocking scheme where Craig Reynolds came running down and knocked the living crap out of the defender, and Amon-Ra sprung open for a 28, 29-yard touchdown. Like those types of things happen with that offense. And a call play, a coordinator, a balanced offense like that, you're right, man. It's a lot of those things that we just talked about is all of what Detroit is on the offensive end.
Yeah, and you could easily look down the wide receiver rankings, and then you can kind of do a mental check mark on stuff like this. Like, for example, A.J. Brown. The Eagles, they got a good offensive line. They got a good running back. They got a good quarterback. Obviously, that's going to improve wide receiver production, and A.J. Brown is on the same tier of Amon-Ra St. Brown, where, you know what, in my opinion, unless they have a season-ending injury, they are bust-proof. Garrett Wilson isn't necessarily, in my opinion, held to that high of regard because, one, they do have a questionable offensive line. They do have a questionable health of a quarterback. That being said, if the quarterback is healthy, Garrett Wilson will be, I don't want to say a steal as a potential late first round, early second round pick, but he's almost going to be a steal if Aaron Rodgers becomes healthy. That is, in my opinion, a little bit more of a higher risk play. I'm not personally willing to do so. And for example, Puka Nacua, in my opinion, you know what? Wide receiver 8, that's a fair value of him. Why? Because they have a good offensive line, good quarterback, and a good running game. And like Tip says, they have a phenomenal coaching staff. So stuff like that is the check mark you're looking for when you are specifically drafting players in the early rounds and even in the later rounds. Now, obviously, people in the later rounds, they're going to have a lot more difficulty checking those boxes, but those are the ones that you're kind of trying to mentally do when you are taking a player.
Right. So let me ask you, have you ever watched the Chappelle Show? Are you a Chappelle Show fan?
No, I was told before my time, but more specifically, my parents wouldn't let me watch it.
Oh, okay. I was gonna make a joke, but
go ahead. You know what? There are
I'll make it because there's probably people they probably listening, but I was gonna call you Dylan because you spit hot fire. And so, yeah, bro, that what you just said was on point, man. It was nice and right, because you have to look at those factors. You have to look at a high-powered offense. Not many people are going to go in and be like into their drafts and say, okay, which Patriots player am I going to take? You know, like, no, you're looking at players from high-powered offenses that are going to get the ball down the field and score points.
Exactly. I mean, obviously, fantasy football is all about who can put the most points possible, and you have to think of it from a strategical standpoint. Like, for example, I know a lot of people hate kickers, but when you are selecting a kicker, obviously, one's in high-power offense. It's not a coincidence that they always put up the most fantasy points. For example, Harrison Butker on the Chiefs. I believe it's Matt Gay on the Bills? No, I don't think he's.
For the kicker, yeah, you're right.
And for example, the Niners, Moody or Justin Tucker. There are teams that always have kickers at the top. And then, you know, a couple years ago for the Niners, it was Robbie Gould. But also one of the sneaky ways to really put on the fantasy points, for example, the Falcons with Young Hoe Koo, because you have to find if you don't get an elite kicker, you have to find one on an offense that's good, just not great, because you need a offense that drives the ball down the field, just not drives the ball enough to score a touchdown, more specifically. Like, obviously you want to get those 40-yard field goals to get those 4 points. So you know what? That's why Young Hui Q for the past couple of years has been such a good option, because the Falcons, they had the ability to run the ball. They had some passing game in the play action, but they didn't have enough to put the ball into the end zone. And because of that, they were just kicking field goals. And, from a actual NFL standpoint, that's not very good. But if you have a kicker such as Young Hui Koo, you know what? That just puts you in such a advantage, because, kickers aren't necessarily supposed to be putting up RB1 numbers.
Right. I mean, and before we move to the next point, because I know that it will come up, because I want to nip that in the bud real quick. It's Tyler Bass who plays for the Buffalo Bills.
Bass. There we go. Yeah, there we go.
Tyler
Bass.
I knew I was wrong. Matt Gay plays for the other blue team. That's the Indianapolis Colts. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking Matt Gay blue, Tyler Bass blue. But yeah, no, you're right.
There we go. All right. So, I mean, obviously, this is kind of the checklist that you kind of want to put in your head when you're drafting a player. A checklist. Does this criteria fall in line? Okay, he has a path to succeed. And a lot of the times you have to sit there and ask yourself, okay, why did a player bust? Why did he fail, or why did he underperform? Especially if it wasn't due to injury. Like, for example, Garrett Wilson last year, obviously, offensive line wasn't good. Quarterback got hurt. Zach Wilson couldn't throw a ball to save his life. Okay, obviously, coincidentally, Garrett Wilson's production absolutely drops off. Devontae Adams, offensive line was below par. Quarterback, they couldn't really figure anything out. Jimmy G kept getting hurt, couldn't even throw the ball properly half the time. Okay, Devontae Adams, inconsistent. Even with a gigantic target share, still inconsistent. Now, running backs such as Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert, why'd they succeed? Because, well, they just had perennial weapons on the outside that made it they couldn't stack the box, decent offensive line, and a quarterback that, we all have question marks on his arm strength, but he was dealing and dicing throughout the field. It gave the running backs a chance to succeed. And guess what? It's no surprise that they did. Stuff like that, like Derrick Henry, weak offensive line, weak wide receivers on the perimeters, weak quarterback play. It's no surprise that he was a little bit underwhelming. And you can't draft these type of players and then wonder where it went wrong. It has to obviously make sense. And when you have a path to succeed, you have to also look at the failure rate. How does their path to failure happen? And obviously, you can weigh the pros and cons and then make your decision. But what you also could do is just listen to us, and then, it just makes your life a little bit easier. But all right. So, I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's a little bit of an easier pick, right? Like, he's in the middle of the draft. He's going to be most likely available in the middle type of the draft, middle of the first round. I think I took him in a league in the 6th pick. Definitely don't regret that at all. I hit that. I don't think I could have hit that button fast enough. And now, for example, if he was taken, I would have taken AJ Brown. I want to make that clear just so people could have an understanding of, okay, so he does get taken. What am I going to do after that? If Amon-Ra St. Brown was taken, I would have taken AJ Brown. If AJ Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown was taken, well, I mean, chances are then somebody like Jamar Chase would be available, but say they're all gone as well, I would probably pivot to a running back like such as Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson, or I don't think I would go for someone like Saquon Barkley or Jonathan Taylor just yet, but those are the 4 type of players that I would be going for if I was in the middle of the draft and Amon-Ra was taken before me.
Yeah, I mean, again, we are. Look, I am the president of the Amon-Ra St. Brown fan club, and I love the kid. And since we're talking wide receivers, I'm going to go with another wide receiver who I
Himmy
should be. Yeah, he could be Himmy, especially if Brandon Ayuk doesn't sign, get traded, whatever they plan on doing with him. If he signs a contract, I don't know what he wants to do. I don't know what the 49ers want to do. So I do know what Deebo Samuel wants to do, and he wants to ball out because he's 28 years old. He has an opportunity to possibly get another contract, and they're going to utilize him the same way they have, and maybe even a little bit more, because even Ricky Pearsall, he cannot find himself he can't find a way to get on the field because of injuries. So I'm really big on Debo right now. I got Debo in a league over the weekend. I think he's my second wide receiver. And look, this could be a scenario where he returns on value big time. And not only that, with Debo Samuel, you still got Christian McCaffrey you have to worry about. I understand the calf injury, but I'm not too worried about it, but I am concerned. And then you also have George Kittle there too. And George Kittle commands a presence, and he's a hell of a blocker. So I feel like Debo Samuel could be one of those situations where if you have him as a number 2 wide receiver on your team, I think you got to be extremely happy. If you have him as your number 1 and you got 2 really good players in front of him, like maybe a Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley combination, or, maybe even like a Bijan Robinson, Travis Etienne combo, something like that, and then you add Debo into the package. Oh, wow. Like, you got yourself a solidified player at each position right there. So I think that Debo is going to really ball out this year. You really haven't heard a lot from him in camp, so that tells me that he's focused. He wants to make that money. So, again, like I said, for me, Debo Samuel is the guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to agree with you because, I mean, just like the criteria that we just talked about a moment ago. Okay, decent offensive line, check. Decent quarterback, check. Decent running game, check. Now, obviously, their running game and stuff like that exceeds expectations, but you know what? I'm just going to keep it as at least it's got to be decent. And all 3 of those criterias fit. Okay, that leaves Debo Samuel in a path to succeed and be productive on the fantasy field. Now, he is slightly a little bit more on the injury prone side where, you know what, if he gets hurt, no one's going to be surprised. But for somebody that's a wide receiver 13, somebody that's taken in the late 2nd round, early 3rd, I'm willing to risk it on it. You know what? I think Debo Samuel is a phenomenal pick, especially with the uncertainty with Brandon Ayuk and the other injured receivers on that team. Like George Kittle, let's face it, he is also injury prone. He misses a handful of games due to injury. And because of that, you know what? I feel a little bit more comfortable taking somebody like Debo Samuel. Now, for example, hit me with if Debo Samuel happens to get taken before you, who would you rather take in that spot?
It's DK Metcalf. But can I go? I'm going to go back to Debo real quick and just say one other thing. The thing about the Brandon Ayuk situation is we also have to factor in that Brandon Ayuk, if he comes back or when he comes back, whatever you want to say, there's going to be a little bit of a rust factor. I know that he's been with the organization. He's been at practices. He's probably working out as well, not on the field, but on the side. He's probably getting, he already knows the playbook pretty much, but there is a rust factor that you have to factor in. Maybe he missed an assignment because he didn't get on the field and do it with the other team or with the ones. So that's something that you have to consider. But going back to DK Metcalf is my next guy. And it's a lot of different things. You got a guy who I want you guys to understand. DK Metcalf is 6'4", 240 pounds. He's bigger than what Julio Jones was, first of all. And the guy is so athletic that he can run down a Buda Baker and stop a touchdown from happening. And if you don't know the play, just type in Buda Baker, DK Metcalf, and you will see the play. The dude is a freak. And I feel like in this Ryan Grubb offense, that Ryan Grubb is going to utilize DK Metcalf the proper way. We saw last year Shane Waldron. He had 3 really good wide receivers. He used them properly at times, but I don't think he utilized DK Metcalf for all what DK Metcalf can do. And when DK Metcalf has his head in the game and he's not hitting people upside the head or trying to hit people upside the head with helmets and just showing that, he's not to be messed with, I think we see a Debo Samuel that will have his head in the game, will be under this Ryan Grubb offense, who's, again, the Washington coordinator from the last couple of years, Washington's Huskies coordinator from the last couple of years, Ryan Grubb. And I feel like this is a situation where DK Metcalf can take advantage of, and he will be the alpha wide receiver in that group.
Yeah, I mean he's a girthy individual. That's like the polite way of saying he girthy. You know, he's a
Ooh,
big dude.
okay.
So right, real quick, just yay or nays. Say Debo Samuel's taken. I'll list a couple people, not just wide receivers, all the positions. You could tell me whether you would take them in place if Debo Samuel's taken. Like Sam Laporta.
No.
Okay.
I will go wide. Are you just telling me any player or just wide receivers?
Any player. Like okay,
yeah,
Debo
no.
Samuel. Debo Samuel's taken. Who would you take in that spot?
I would go Cooper Kupp. I would go DK Metcalf, like we just talked about. Possibly maybe a Mike Evans.
Mike Evans. I mean, I would.
Pittman.
I would take Mike Evans over all of them personally, just because you know what, I want consistent production from my probably wide receiver one, and Mike Evans has just been doing that for 8 to 9 years now. It's like, okay, is he going to do it again? Of course he's going to do it again.
Yeah, you can't.
He's not that old. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes.
I'm not going to take Patrick Mahomes. I've been against taking quarterback, although I did get him in one draft, but I think I waited till like the fifth round. So no, I would still wait.
Okay. What about a running back? Would you take Rachaad White?
Yeah, I would consider Rachaad White, especially if it's a PPR league, because you know he's going to get a lot of those dump off passes from Baker Mayfield. So I would consider that. Okay, but it also depends on if I already have two running backs. If I have two running backs, I would give it some strong consideration, but I want that wide receiver.
Now, say, okay, I'll put you through a minor hypothetical. You know, I won't go too in detail, but you know, you're in the 4th round of the draft. You took 2 wide receivers. It doesn't really matter which two. The running back. And right now you are coming up with the 4th pick. You have DK Metcalf, Lamar Jackson, James Cook, and Joe Mixon available.
DK Metcalf.
Metcalf?
It goes DK Metcalf, Mixon, Lamar Jackson, and then maybe James Cook. Ooh. Look, look. The thing about James Cook is I'm not doubting the talent. He is an in between the 20s runner. He is not going to really get any goal line touches because they got Josh Allen. They've got Ray Davis, who looked really good in this last preseason game. And not only that, they also have Curtis Samuel. I know Curtis Samuel's a little banged up, but he always is. But he can also take rushing from James Cook as well. So I'm just really not feeling James Cook, man. And I know a lot of people are, and I get it. That's cool, but I'm not feeling it.
How do you feel about Jalen Waddle?
I love Jalen Waddle now. Now we're talking. I think that he has an opportunity to take a little bit from Tyreek Hill, not a lot, but a little bit from Tyreek Hill, and do and have himself a really solid season. It's always been those nagging injuries with him because you see when he's on the field, he's one of the fastest guys out there, and Tyreek Hill is just a freak. But I would consider Jalen Waddle over around that area too. Absolutely.
Now, absolutely. This one's a side note. Okay. Fantasy football is about winning, right?
Right.
But it's also about having fun. And Jalen Waddle is somebody that I always try to target because when he does something good, I can do the Waddle dance with him. I wish I had some thing. Oh wow! Yeah, the waddle dance. Yeah, the little waddle, and then you can say, and then he waddled away, waddle, till the very, you know, something like that's why I take Jalen Waddle. Like I wish I had some analytical reasons to take him. It's why I take him.
Dude, do you have children?
No.
Oh, that's pretty impressive that you don't have kids and you know that duck song. That's pretty cool, man.
I spend too much time on YouTube. It's not good.
Okay.
It's not good. Yeah.
I mean, my daughters would sing that song all the time. So that's actually pretty cool.
Then he waddled away.
Right.
Next thing. All right. So yeah, that's why I'm taking Jalen Waddle. And you know what? If you look in a league with Tip and I, you will notice that I took Jalen Waddle with a 3rd round pick.
That's that. I'm not mad at that. Who were your? I know but for the second time, real quick, who was your receiver or your team? Your 2 players before that?
So Amon-Ra St. Brown,
Oh,
gotta
see,
have him.
look at that.
Gotta have
Look
him.
at that.
You already
Look
know
at that.
I preach what I say on stuff like that.
Look
I took
at that.
Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Look at that.
Now I gotta look at my team. I'm trying to remember what I took for the second pick.
But to have Jalen Waddle as your number 2 behind Amon-Ra St. Brown, you've got the best of both worlds. You got a guy who is a PPR monster, and then you got a guy who can potentially get himself, I'd say a really good game for Waddle would be like 7-8 catches and close to 100 yards or maybe 120 yards because he's so fast he might break one off and a touchdown. That's beautiful, man.
Well, the funny thing is he's my wide receiver 3.
Oh my God! See, now you show it off. This is in the league that we're in, and I allowed that to happen. What is going on?
Yeah, I decided to go for the risky one. I wanted it. I took Devontae Adams for round number 2. So I went Amon-Ra, Devontae, Waddle for the first 3 picks, and then I went James. I went James Cook just because I needed a running back, and he was honestly best one available.
Yeah.
And then I needed another running back, so I took Lamar Jackson.
You and that Lamar Jackson running back comment. Yeah, come on.
I mean, he's a 2-for-1. He's a quarterback and a running back. If you need a RB2 and a quarterback, you might as well take a running quarterback because it fills both needs at the same time. It's like men's 2-for-1 shampoo. Sometimes you just get it because it does both.
All right, I got it.
All right. Enough talking about my fantasy team and how I'm doing on that right now. But all right, give me another player that you gotta have.
Yeah, I mean, and really, it's more because of his ADP. It's Jerome Ford. I didn't get him in the draft I was in over the weekend because I to be honest, I missed on him. I thought he was already taken, and I didn't read the board properly. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, Jerome Ford just went in the 11th round. And I don't remember exactly who my pick was. It wasn't a bad pick, but if you happen to have a number 1 running back for a team like the Cleveland Browns, who, yes, they may have some discrepancies at offense with Deshaun Watson there, but you have one of the top offensive lines when healthy. And you got a situation where we don't know if we're going to see Nick Chubb this year. And if we do see Nick Chubb this year, we don't know what type of Nick Chubb that's going to be because what happened last year on that field, I believe it was a Monday night. I know it was a primetime game. That I don't know how you can come back in months and feel confident with your knee after that, and that's the thing that a lot of these, researchers and a lot of the medical people, I went to the expo last week and I talked to Dr. Jesse Morse, and he just said, it's not really the pain tolerance. It's not really the issues that these players have. It's the confidence in their knee, especially in their knee when they're running backs. It's the confidence that they have. So I just don't know how confident he's going to be. Now, he may have a little bit of confidence because he's overcome this before, but still, you're a little older too. I just don't know why Jerome Ford is not being picked. Last year, he had 44 receptions, which is not bad. He wasn't a part-time. He played all 17 games. But I will say this. Out of those 44 receptions, 5 of them went for touchdowns. And that only trailed Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey had 7 receiving touchdowns, and Jerome Ford was number 2 at 5. And then there was a bunch of them at 4. But that right there, when he gets the ball in his hand, if it's a passing situation, that tells me 2 things. The team is blocking for him, and he's finding those holes, and he's assertive enough to get to the end zone. And I want that. I want that in a guy, especially, like I said, if you could get him in double-digit rounds. I would tell you the next drafts that I am doing, if Jerome Ford is there in the 8th or 9th round, I'm definitely smashing the draft button on him.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think of it this way, right? Who else in the 11th, 10th, 9th round are you going to draft that has higher upside than Jerome Ford, who is basically potentially RB1 in this instance? And you know what? Honestly, the only answer is Raheem Mostert. And we're going to talk about him in a moment. But really Ford has such a high ceiling because even if he isn't the initial starter, right? We don't know when Chubb is coming back. We don't know how he's going to be when he comes back, like Tip said. And all of that just is points upward to somebody like Jerome Ford's stock because, I mean, if you're able to grab a late round running back that offers week to week contributions to your fantasy team, it's a cheat code. It's the easiest way to give an example is that it's just a cheat code. And Raheem Mostert has been that the past few weeks. We'll talk about him in a moment. But Jerome Ford, I'm going to tell you, like, if he's available in the 9th round, I'm probably taking him.
Yeah. I mean, you have to, at this point, you got to look at the situation that, okay, if I take him in the 9th round, there's a good chance I've got two running backs. I should already have 2 running backs on my squad. And I should have a, wide receiver mix with tight end, maybe a quarterback. I should be able to get Jerome Ford as a decent, I think more than a decent flex option. And I get Deonta Foreman is there. I get it. I understand he's going to take some touches away from him. He's going to take some goal line work away from him. That's fine. But what Jerome Ford proved to me last year is he has a nose for that end zone once he gets the ball in his hands.
Yeah, I mean, think of it this way. Right now, I'm looking on the ADP chart, right? Jared Goff is ahead of him. Like, in my opinion, I like Jared Goff. That shouldn't happen. Ford should be ahead of Goff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at it like Trey Benson.
I love Trey Benson, but no, there's no way.
No reason.
No
Caleb
way.
Williams, cool. Rookie quarter, I'm interested. He shouldn't be ahead of him. Tua shouldn't be ahead of him.
No.
Jordan Addison, well, I think he's out for the season, isn't he?
No. Jordan Addison with Minnesota?
Yeah.
No, he may be suspended due to that, DUI situation at the airport. Oh,
okay.
But no, I don't think. Yeah, he's good as far as
he got punished for DUI. Man, you should get.
I don't know if he did. Look at you, man. Don't look at you. Man. You crazy, bro.
I know that's terrible. Reward him. All right, like Brock Bowers. I'm sorry, Brock. Give me Ford over Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
Brian Robinson Jr.
Wait. Now you're tugging at my Raiders heartstrings.
I know. I got to do that. It's fun.
I mean, no, I would still go. Ooh, wow, that's tough. I would still go Ford though.
Yeah, like okay. You're in the late 9th round. I'll give you a scenario. Ford and Nick Chubb are available. Who are you taking?
Oh, Ford.
Ford over.
I'm taking the guy that's playing that I know is gonna at least play. Yeah.
All right. That being said, though, I will say if Ford is taken and it hits like the 10th round and Chubb is still available, I'll take Chubb for that upside that he does come back, become that starting running back, and then he takes over that role. Like either one, I wouldn't mind having, but like Tip said, I'd probably prefer having Ford just because he's the for sure playing option.
I think it depends also on how many running backs you have already.
Yeah, that's fair.
You got 2 running backs, I wouldn't do that. But if you got 3, maybe 4, okay.
Yeah, fair point. All right. So, you know what? I'm not going to spend too much time on Raheem Mostert. I think he's a guy you got to have on your roster just because he fits the criteria of what a running back needs in order to succeed. Perennial weapons on the outside, a decent offensive line, a decent quarterback. And we see it consistently over and over and over where people wonder, how did Raheem Mostert fall so far? They shouldn't have let this happen. That guy has such a cheat code in the running back position. Congratulations, Raheem Mostert. He's still RB 25 being slept on. I know Devon A-Chain's there, but there is nothing. Let me repeat that, nothing that says Raheem Mostert is not going to get playing time, not going to get touchdown opportunity, not going to get opportunities to get fantasy points on your team, because it's going to happen with that roster, with how fast he is going to get fantasy points. I can't say that enough. And somebody with an ADP of 74 in the 7th round, maybe late 6th, like he is somebody like you just gotta find a way to put him on your roster, like around him, like Evan Ingram. Really, you want Evan Ingram over Raheem Mostert? No, you don't. You want Chris Godwin over him? I like Chris Godwin, but I like Raheem Mostert more. I like him over Calvin Ridley, Jalen Reed, Tony Pollard, Rashid Rice, Drake Ferguson, David Njoku, Zach Moss. Like really, like Zach Moss has the same around ADP of him, and you're telling me you would rather have Zach Moss over Raheem? Like, come on, Christian Kirk? No, give me Raheem Mostert. Like,
You said Rashid Rice though. Hold on.
Rashid Rice might be pushing it a little bit, but you know what? I think that at that point you would have to look at roster construction. If you feel comfortable with your wide receivers, then you go for Raheem Mostert. But you know what? If you went RB heavy and you could afford it, then I would go Rashid Rice. And especially if you need wide receivers, if you went RB heavy, chances are in the late 6th to early 7th round, mid 7th, you're probably looking at a wide receiver at that spot rather than a running back. But you know what? Personally, like say it's even, I'm probably going to go with the running back.
Okay, so I've been researching this Miami Dolphins team, right? Because I wanna see if I see something from last year. So last year they ran the ball about 26 times a game. They're like right at 20, let's just say 27 times a game, right? Yeah. And that was with Mostert mainly, and then you have Devon Achane, I think, had like 103 carries or something. Very efficient with his carries, but he didn't have a lot of carries. But he also missed 11 games, right? So now you bring in a guy like Jalen Wright, who's younger, just as fast as Mostert, maybe not as fast as Devon Achane, but he's as fast. He's a pretty fast guy, and he's 5'10", 210-ish odd pounds. So I don't know, man. I don't know if if you look at it, like how are they going to divvy that up? Because some point in the season, they did it last year with Slavan Ahmed. So like they would bring in 3. They would Jeff Wilson. They would do, and I think Jeff Wilson's still there too. So like I just don't know like who's all going to get these carries. I mean, yeah, Devon Achane might get like a flash carry here or there, but then you take him out, then you got to worry about Raheem Mostert getting maybe 5 flash carries as well, and then maybe the Jalen Wright kid. I don't know, and it's just that's the only thing that I'm looking at. They don't run the ball enough. Maybe they'll change that. Hopefully they will this year to protect Tua, and but when you got a speed receiving core like that, track speed, it's hard to not throw the ball too. So I just don't know, man, with that Dolphins team.
I don't think they drafted specifically Jalen Wright to make an immediate fantasy impact in a way that I think a lot of people are expecting. I think they are doing it more for insurance reasons because you know what? Their running backs do get hurt. Achane got hurt. Raheem Mostert got hurt. And Jeff Wilson even got hurt. Yeah. At some point, all 3 of the running backs got hurt. So you know what? They needed depth. And
so you think it's more of a depth piece, not a necessary taking away carries piece.
Right now, yeah. Right now, I think he's more depth. The fact that the only reason why he didn't play against the Commanders in the preseason was because he had an injury. It tells me that, you know what, maybe his value was overinflated just because, you know what, a running back doesn't usually play preseason games if they're worried about his carries, his health, or his startability because, you know, he would be an impact starter. Like right now, I think if you watch like 80% of preseason games, like the starting running backs do not play. And the fact that he did play or he would have played if it wasn't for an injury tells me that, you know what, he's not that serious in their starting lineup, in my opinion.
Okay.
Usually like wide receivers will play, tight ends, offensive linemen, but usually like I've noticed that when a running back plays or doesn't play speaks a lot more.
Okay.
All right, but go ahead. Yeah. Give me a player. We'll go probably one more each, and then we might see how many we can wrap up.
So let's do tight ends. So for me, and I haven't been doing this until lately in drafts. I just don't see. Okay, look. First of all, tight end position is very deep, and you've got the main guys, right? You got Travis Kelce, you've got Mark Andrews, Sam Laporta, Trey McBride. You got all those guys who you can actually get on your squad and be very, very happy. But I think when we first talked about this, we wanted to start with some deeper players first. So for me, I just don't know how we can't at least get somebody like Taysom Hill on our squads. And before everybody starts going, Taysom Hill, like what is he talking about? I look at the fact that on Sleeper, he is a quarterback eligible tight end. So the fact is, on one of my squads, I've got CJ Stroud as my regular quarterback. And for some weird, crazy chance, just on the off case that Taysom Hill is used in the passing game a little bit in this Clint Kubiak offense, that is a 49ers, or he was a pass game coordinator for the 49ers last year. This tells me that the 49ers or Clint Kubiak likes to use those gadgetry type players, right? Like a Deebo Samuel. That comes from a Shanahan offense where they like to use those gadgetry type players. So Taysom Hill, I think, is possibly the ultimate gadget player. He can pass, he can throw, he can run, he can catch a little bit. We saw him in the preseason, scored at the touchdown at the 1 yard line. He is their goal line guy. Alvin Kamara can do it, but at this point in his career, they trying to reserve him as much as they can. They don't want to give him too many goal line carries. I know that Taysom Hill is 33, but he's like still a young 33 because he's a weird type of player, man. He has had some injuries, but it hasn't been anything really, really bad, in multiple times. But he's had some nicks and bruises. Everybody has. But I just think it's Taysom Hill, and I think right now you can get him. I reached and got him at like the 13th round in this last draft because I waited on tight end. He was not my first tight end. My first tight end was Pat Fry. No, it was Cole Kmet. Excuse me, Cole Kmet. And I'm kind of iffy on Cole Kmet, but I was just like, man, I got to have an insurance policy just in case. And that's where I saw Taysom Hill there. And I think that he can bring a dynamic element to your fantasy football team. So for me, it's Taysom Hill.
So just for clarity reasons, is he still eligible for the tight end and the quarterback position on every league, or just
I don't know?
Sleeper?
I don't know for every on Sleeper. I did notice that. I don't know if it's for everything. I want to say I remember him being like that in Yahoo too, but then I also remember one of the big boys changed it, and I don't remember Yahoo. Which one. Yeah, it may have been Yahoo. I have not looked at that. I honestly, I haven't done many Yahoo leagues yet. I'm doing a Yahoo league this Friday. So that'll be the first one that I've done. I've been doing a bunch of Sleeper, and then obviously the one that we're on with Full-Time Fantasy. But yeah.
Yeah, I haven't done any Yahoo ones to give a for sure answer on. But I know, I don't remember if it was them, ESPN. I think it was Yahoo that changed it. So he wasn't eligible. Yeah, so I mean, if that's the case, then unfortunately, I think that erases a majority of Taysom Hill's fantasy value.
Right.
I mean, if he is just a tight end, or if he's just a quarterback, then no, he's kind of useless.
Useless.
If he is just a tight end, then he still has potential, boom or bust potential. I mean, he has dropped a couple donuts or a couple 1-pointers, a couple 2-pointers, a couple free throws, but he also dropped a couple 20 burgers just because he has that huge play potential. And last year and the year before that, I highly recommended somebody like Taysom Hill just because, you know what, there just wasn't very many tight ends out there. Like, let's just be honest. Like, if you didn't have one of the big threes, you didn't really have a tight end. You were hoping for 5 catches, 30 yards, and maybe one of them fell into the end zone for a good day. Other than that, 5 fantasy points, you called it a good day in the tight end position. But Taysom Hill, he kind of actually gives you the ability to win a week. Like, if you had Taysom Hill, right, and he dropped 0 points, chances are you didn't lose your week because your other alternate option gave you 5 fantasy points. Like, it's not that serious. So, I mean, stuff like that, you'd go for Taysom Hill. But you know what, obviously, if you're looking for something more consistent, maybe a higher upside, I think Cole Kmet would be the guy that I'm pretty interested in, just because that offense looks really rejuvenated. The offensive line looks rejuvenated. Their running back game looks rejuvenated. And then, of course, the quarterback, they look rejuvenated with Caleb Williams. And
there's a lot of rejuvenation going on there in Chicago. Huh?
Chicago, they got a lot to feel good about right now. And they got wide receivers. So, Cole Kmet isn't going to be seeing a bulk of the coverage. And you know what, like we're talking about criteria to succeed, Cole Kmet got put in that section now. Previous years, like last year, the year before that, they didn't have the quarterback. They didn't really have the offensive line. They had a mediocre running game. They had also mediocre weaponry just because DJ Moore came in later in the year. But Cole Kmet didn't necessarily have the path to succeed other than a touchdown. Now he has a path to succeed in multiple areas just because, you know what, they got a lot of rejuvenation on that offensive front.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Cole Kmet call. I really feel like I feel like it's gonna be a little bit of Cole Kmet and Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen, who will be Caleb Williams' safety blankets. You know, like
Yes.
I feel like it's gonna be Keenan Allen just because Keenan Allen is still one of the really good route runners in the league. You know, yes, I understand he's a little older, but Cole Kmet is also a very good pass catching tight end. He can block too. He's a very good all around tight end for that offense. Now the question is, will they use him to mask the possible deficiencies on the offensive line? But I think that offensive line has gotten better. So with that being said, I always like a tight end who's on a really good offensive line. Now I'm thinking about it. Maybe Taysom Hill wasn't the person because the Saints offensive line is terrible, or it was at least last year. But still, the Cole Kmet call is beautiful, man. It's like I see a scenario where he's gonna have some of those weeks where you're like, man, where was Cole Kmet? You know, two catches for 20 yards or 23 yards or something like that. But then he's gonna have a string of games where he goes off in a row where he's getting maybe 40 catches for 4 to 5 catches for 40 yards and maybe a score, which could be a big week for a tight end. So I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, other tight ends, just because we're on the topic of them helping on the offensive line. Like, for example, like George Kittle, he also has sometimes the irregularities in his fantasy score because you know what? They might have Trent Williams on the left side, but on the right side, they kind of got a couple rag dolls out there. So George Kittle is consistently lined up on the right side. He might offer a chip. He might help block. He might, offer, some formation alignment that makes it so the defense has to play it a little bit differently. But you know what? He doesn't necessarily get to run meaningful routes. Like, you know what? If George Kittle runs an in route or an out or a corner or a post, like it's a meaningful route because you know what? He has a legitimate chance to catch the football and get some yak, put up some fantasy points. But if he is blocking and chipping and then going to the flat and being a check down, like, he'd run a route. But it wasn't a meaningful route. The point of that play wasn't to get the ball to him. You're looking for a scramble play, ones where the other reads previously didn't get open. And then the offensive line holds up for him to go all the way back to that fourth option, which is George Kittle. So, I mean, you also have to look at something like that when you are drafting a tight end. Of course, you know what? Sometimes you just don't have the most lucrative options because not everybody could have a Travis Kelce on their team or a Sam Laporta or what it looks like a Trey McBride we're hoping for. But you know what? Somebody like Cole Kmet is somebody that I'm more willing to put in because I do consider him a little bit of a baby George Kittle where, he's not going to have that huge upside that I think George Kittle has. But you know what? When somebody has an ADP of, 15th round, 14th, 13th, 12th round in the tight end position, you know what? I'm willing to take that risk on Cole Kmet.
It's the value. Yeah, it's the value in that.
It's the value. Now Kyle Pitts, he's just not the value.
I'm starting. Okay, Nader, I'm starting to come around a little bit on Kyle Pitts, but I'm still so nervous about him.
I know you're a big Kyle Pitts guy.
I am, but I'm just so nervous about the guy because and I think I got him in my very first draft, which was like in May or June. I think it was the beginning of June. And I got him and I was like, okay, Kyle Pitts, cool. And now I haven't gotten him anywhere else. That was the only, and I went in this year saying I'm going to try to get a lot of Kyle Pitts. And I haven't gotten him in any other leagues. Maybe a best ball league, but that's it.
I debated it in one league. I was like, you know what? I should do it just to do it. But then I was like, you know what? I want to win. So I did.
Wow.
Yeah. I didn't mean to do it like that. I don't know. I just don't feel comfortable. Sometimes there are players that you take not because you want to, but because you feel like you have to.
Right.
A couple years ago, probably like 4 to 5 years ago, it was probably David Montgomery on the Bears. Like, there was nothing wrong with him.
Right.
If you started him, you were going to get like 15, 20 touches, 70 yards, maybe a catch or two. You know what? Maybe if he had a good day, he would get a touchdown. There's nothing wrong with that production.
Maybe,
That's production.
Yeah.
But it's like, God, I really don't want to draft him.
Oh, I'm drafting David Montgomery now, though.
Yeah, that's different. This is different.
Yeah.
Story.
No, I feel you on that because he was like one of those guys where you were like, Well, he's a starter, but the Bears. It's like
It's like,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
you know,
Yeah.
you gotta like talk yourself into it. Like you gotta
Right.
you went the whole pre-draft process going, yeah, I don't really want him. I'm fading him. But you got put in a situation where you kind of have to take him because it's either that because David Montgomery at the time, he was probably the last like starting running back that you could take. So after you take him, you kind of try to hype yourself up like, oh, he's a starting running back. He's all right, you know, like
I love it. Yep.
Yeah, I've done that plenty of times. The amount of times I've said like, oh, I don't want like Mike Evans. This is going to be the year where he falls, where he falls off. And he doesn't do it. He doesn't have that 1,000-yard season. Only for me to be forced to draft him and then tell myself, man, you know how many 1,000-yard seasons he's bound to do it again.
All right.
Anyway,
that's
all right. Well, you know that's the copium that I have when I take a player that I don't necessarily like. All right, now let's do one more quarterback. And then let's do a sign off on that one. Do you have a quarterback specifically for me?
Yeah, I do. It's Trevor Lawrence. Look, I want you guys to extrapolate this for just a second with Trevor Lawrence. The dude is being drafted in the 10th round, and he's got the easiest on paper schedule in the league. He is being drafted in the 10th round and got the easiest quarterback schedule in the league. Now, I know that's on paper. I know it's not the big thing, but I'm just going to tell you guys, they got rid of Calvin Ridley. Okay, I get that. I thought Calvin Ridley did a pretty good job last year with him coming back. He had a couple of major, like big time drops, but I think he did a pretty good job for him coming back into the league after suspension and putting up 1,000 yards with 8 touchdowns. I thought that wasn't too bad. Now you bring in 2 wide receivers, one in Gabe Davis. Stop. I'm not talking about Gabe Davis from a fantasy aspect, but he is going to help this team. And then you also bring in Brian Thomas Jr., who I think is one of the best wide receivers that come out of this draft, this past draft. So the Gabe Davis situation is I do expect Gabe Davis to be that annoying, you know, I got a touchdown with 80 yards on 2 catches type guy. That'll happen with him, but he is a wide receiver who likes to block. He is a very good blocker, so he's going to help spring open passing opportunities for a Brian Thomas Jr., a Christian Kirk, should he come back healthy. Which, by the way, we don't talk enough about Parker Washington. Parker Washington in the preseason has 4 catches, 48 yards, and a touchdown. I know that touchdown was from Mac Jones, but Parker Washington needs to be a guy that is at least rostered on squads. If you're in a deep league where you get like 20 plus rounds, Parker Washington needs to be on everybody's team. I'm starting to consider doing that, especially if I'm a Christian, if I'm a Christian Kirk guy, not necessarily an owner, but a Christian Kirk guy, because if Christian Kirk gets banged up again, we saw Parker Washington flash last year, and he could flash again. But you also got Ingram. And I see a scenario where the offense may be a little bit better as far as understanding the offense from Trevor Lawrence's aspect, or Trevor Lawrence's, his aspect. He was a little banged up last year. I just think that the Jaguars have an opportunity to score points. Their defense is not bad, but it's not one of the better defenses. So they are going to have to put points up, especially in a division where you got CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and maybe of Will Levis, who could score some points on the Brian Callahan offense. We got to see that. But I know I was a little bit higher, but yeah, you're right. Ain't nobody got time for that. So, but with Trevor Lawrence, I feel like this is a situation where he could really thrive for a fantasy manager as a number 1 quarterback, as a number 2 quarterback, because he's going later in rounds. Now, if it's a 2 QB league, chances are you're not going to be able to get him like that. But I did. I got him as my number 1. And don't laugh, my number 2 was Aaron Rodgers, and my number 3 was Sam Darnold. So I've got these wide receivers that I'm like, these quarterbacks that are like, well, they could do something, but we don't know. But I like the fact that I got Trevor Lawrence in a 2 QB league in like round 8 or 9, which I thought was crazy. That was actually the Scott Fish Bowl. So anyway, I like Trevor Lawrence. I think that he is going to have a really good year, and I think he's going underrated. undervalued, excuse me, and he's going to be an underrated player for fantasy.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna change the Titans name to Time Titans, just because nobody got time for them. All right, I mean, Trevor Wilson has all the tools to succeed. He's got a running game, he's got a coaching staff, he's got weapons on the outside, and there's realistically no reason for him to fail other than injury. Because I mean, well, he's had that last year, I believe it was. He got injured in the later half of the season. Now he did have that ultimate breakdown or meltdown, because I think they were like 8-2.
They had a really good record,
a really good start, and then they just kind of downfalled. But you know what? That doesn't matter. It's not fantasy. If anything, you kind of wouldn't mind a quarterback on a mediocre team, just because if they're losing, they just kind of huck the ball, and that, obviously that equals fantasy points. But I don't mind Trevor Lawrence at all, especially at his ADP. Like, I don't know if you touched on it too much on it, but right now his ADP is like bottom 14.
It's crazy, dude.
So, I mean, at that point, it's like, okay, who the hell cares if he doesn't work out, just because you could drop him and pick anybody else after that. And realistically, if you take a wide receiver like a Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, stuff like that, you are able to easily stack it, because not only is it a quality stack, it is a cheap stack, just because it didn't cost you anything to do it.
Yeah. Yes.
So you know what? You don't have to live by it or die by it, because you can just separate it at any point of the season. Like, for example, if you take Amon-Ra St. Brown, actually, you know what? Let's go a more expensive one. Let's go AJ Brown. You take AJ Brown and you stack him with Jalen Hurts. If that offense doesn't just become fluid, coherent, and just put up fantasy points like no other, that's an expensive stack for it to not work out. That's going to affect your season.
That's a great point. Wow.
If Evan Ingram and Trevor Lawrence becomes a phenomenal stack, well, you know what? That saved your season and put you in a high opportunity to go deep in the playoffs, because not only did it work out and it's a stack, but it was an inexpensive stack. That means also your other players and your other picks also has the opportunities to work out and put fantasy points on their own. Say, for example, you had Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then you had my prior draft that we talked about earlier.
I knew you were going to try to throw that in, and then there.
Whittle.
See?
You had something like that, right? You got elite wide receivers on the outside, and then you got unfortunately, I'm going to take away the Lamar Jackson. Say I took Evan Ingram at the end, and then I took Trevor Lawrence at the end, and they work out, and they're putting up fantasy points to the top 10 potential fantasy points in their position, not in total. Top 10 in their position total, plus the other players that I previously drafted. I'm going to be a tough team to beat every single week. But if AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts do what they're supposed to do, well, it doesn't put you in a better position to succeed, because they were supposed to do that. Like, they're all they're doing is just matching their potential, not exceeding it.
Look at you, man.
Every so often I drop a little wisdom. It's when we don't have a third guest. When we don't have a third guest, yeah. When we don't have a third guest, I take the entertainer hat off, or at least the attempt at entertaining hat off, and I put the analytical one. And just because we don't have a guest, I decided, I'm like, all right, let me put the analytical hat on.
Look at you, man. That's what's up, bro.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, like, it's what they're supposed to do. And because of that, you're not winning games because of the stack. It's just helping you out and putting you in a better position, just because, you know what, they are high ADP players. They're doing good and they're putting fantasy points. But you know what, like I said, they're supposed to do that. That's why their ADPs were so high. Somebody like Evan Ingram and Trevor Lawrence, they weren't expected to do it. So when it does work out, it greatly helps your fantasy team.
Yep, 100%.
All righty. Okay, so now we're nearing past the hour mark. You know what? As much as I like talking about fantasy football, especially for longer periods of time, we're going to have to wrap up this episode. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, at Tippmajor. That's where you guys find me on X, on Spaces, here with 32-Bit. Got a few other projects as well. But just go ahead, follow me. Give me a follow. If you like my content, I guarantee you I'm going to try the best to entertain. That is what I love to do. I love to have fun and talk fantasy football.
There you go. Yeah, follow Tip instead of me, just because I'd rather you didn't. But all right, other than that,
you're a cool follow, though. You're a cool follow. You're cool. You're cool. I saw some of the stuff you do. I'll be like, oh, wow, that guy Nader is funny. All right.
No, not even.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Good luck, everybody.
I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready for all today.